My name is Nina Vaughn. I'm 34, and I didn't realize my life was about to split into a before and an after until my husband lifted his glass at our anniversary dinner, smiling like a man who thought the room belonged to him, and decided to make me the joke that would keep everyone entertained. It was a Friday night. Our place smelled like rosemary and seared steak, the kind of smell that should have meant warmth, should have meant celebration. Instead, it felt like stage makeup, pretty from a distance, suffocating up close. We had 5 couples crammed into our dining room, expensive wine, fancy little plates, people laughing too loudly at stories they didn't actually care about, and me sitting beside Garrett, 32, my husband of 4 years, halfway through my second glass of soda because I wanted my head clear. I'd learned that lesson the hard way. If Garrett was drinking, Garrett was performing, and if Garrett was performing, someone always paid. "Okay," Forrest said from across the table, grinning as he poured more wine. "Anniversary question. How do you two keep the spark alive after 4 years?" There it was, the kind of harmless, stupid question people ask when they've run out of real things to say. I felt my stomach tighten, not because of the question, but because I saw Garrett's eyes flick toward the group, toward the audience, like a comedian spotting the perfect opening. He laughed that loud, overconfident laugh, the one he used when he wanted people to believe he was charming. "Spark," Garrett repeated, leaning back in his chair like he owned the air with Nina. He gestured toward me with his glass, nearly sloshing wine onto the tablecloth I'd ironed myself. "Let me tell you about our love life." My fingers tightened around my fork. I could feel it coming the way you feel thunder in your bones before the rain hits. Garrett loved attention the way fire loved oxygen, and lately he'd been starving. "Garrett," I said quietly, warning in my tone. He ignored it. Of course he did. "Nina's idea of foreplay," he continued, louder now, "is asking me if I'm ready yet." The table burst into laughter, uncomfortable laughter, the kind that tries to pretend it's all in good fun because the alternative is admitting something ugly is happening in real time. My face didn't change. I didn't give him the satisfaction. Garrett leaned forward like he was sharing a secret, but he spoke clearly enough for everyone to hear. And then it's just mechanical, like she's following IKEA instructions. More laughter. Blair's laugh was the loudest, high and breathy, like she couldn't believe she was being allowed to witness this. I stared at my plate. I tasted metal in my mouth, like I'd bitten my tongue without realizing. "Seriously," Garrett went on, warming to it, "it's the same routine, same everything. I could set a timer. 2 minutes of kissing if I'm lucky, then straight to business for exactly, what is it?" He pretended to think, tapping his temple. 4.5 minutes. He made a little gesture with his hands like he was measuring something small. The men at the table laughed in that forced way. Men laugh when they don't know if they should defend someone or pretend it's harmless. The women laughed because laughter is what people do when they don't know where to put their discomfort. My chest stayed still, my expression stayed calm, because the truth was, Garrett didn't know he was building his own coffin, and every word out of his mouth was another nail. "The worst part," he said, and now he was grinning like he'd saved the best punchline for last, "is she thinks she's good." He looked around the table, eyebrows raised, inviting them to join him. Like, genuinely believes she's doing something for me, bless her heart. That's when the voice came from across the table, low, casual, almost bored. Funny. Everyone turned. Cole Mercer sat there with his elbows near his plate, eyes steady, expression unreadable. He didn't smile, he didn't perform, he just spoke. Because Nina's actually incredible in bed. Silence hit the room so hard it felt physical. A fork clinked against a plate somewhere. Someone swallowed too loudly. The air itself seemed to stop moving. Garrett's face went through 3 emotions in 2 seconds. Tipsy amusement, confusion, then something sharp and dangerous. "Excuse me?" Garrett's voice dropped into ice. Cole shrugged and took a slow sip of his drink, like he'd commented on the weather. "Just saying," he replied. "From personal experience, she's definitely not following any IKEA instructions." Blair's mouth literally fell open. Forrest shifted in his chair like he wanted to disappear through the floor. And me, I didn't say a word. I took another sip of soda and watched my husband's brain trying to process what just happened, because that moment right there was the beginning of the end. Garrett stared at Cole like he wanted to leap across the table. Then Garrett snapped his gaze to me, then back to Cole. "You're joking," Garrett said, but his voice cracked on the last word. "Nope." Cole's mouth tilted slightly. Not quite a smile, more like a blade catching light. "Sorry to contradict your story, but facts are facts." Garrett's knuckles whitened around his glass. "Nina," he said, tight and controlled, "tell me he's lying." I looked at Garrett, really looked at him, at the man who'd stood in our kitchen and kissed my cheek that morning like we were normal, at the man who'd been humming in the shower like he hadn't been living a double life. And I realized something simple and terrifying. He wasn't asking because he cared about truth. He was asking because he needed control back. So I blinked once and said calmly, evenly, "He's not lying." The room erupted, a gasp, a curse under someone's breath, a glass tipping over and nobody moving to catch it. Garrett went pale, then red, then pale again, like a broken traffic light. "You," he started, and the word came out strangled. "You cheated on me?" I leaned back in my chair and held his gaze. "Same week you were disappearing for late meetings," I said softly. "Remember those?" His eyes widened, and there it was, the first tiny crack in the mask. "But before you decide you know what kind of woman I am, before you label me and tuck me into a neat little box, let me back up. Because that dinner, that wasn't the beginning, that was the end game, the final move. And to understand why it was so perfectly timed, you need to know what Garrett did first." 3 weeks earlier, Garrett left his phone on the kitchen counter. That alone wouldn't have meant anything. We lived together. Phones got forgotten all the time. Trust had once been so normal between us that the idea of snooping felt unnecessary, almost insulting. I wasn't snooping. I was rinsing a mug when the phone buzzed. Once, twice. I glanced over automatically, the way anyone does when a screen lights up in the corner of their vision. "Sloan, work. Can't wait to see you tomorrow. Wear that black thing again." I froze. The mug slipped slightly in my hand, ceramic clinking against the sink. Sloan, a name I recognized. She was the coworker Garrett mentioned casually, too casually, over the past few months. The one he stayed late with. The one who really understood the pressure he was under. The one who apparently needed him to wear something specific. I told myself there was an explanation. There's always that first moment where your brain tries to protect you, tries to rewrite reality before it shatters. Then the phone buzzed again. I picked it up, unlocked it, and stepped into a version of my marriage I didn't recognize. 6 months, 6 full months of messages scrolled past my thumb. Flirting, photos, plans, hotel reservations, lunch meetings that bled into afternoons that disappeared entirely. But the cheating wasn't what hollowed me out. It was the way he talked about me. "Sloan, when are you going to leave her?" Garrett, "I don't know. She's useful." "Useful? Like a tool?" Garrett, "She does everything around the house, never complains. It's like having a really obedient roommate who pays half the bills." My hands started shaking, but I kept reading. "Sloan, she doesn't sound like much of a wife." Garrett, "She's not. She's boring as hell. Personality of a wet towel." I sat down at the kitchen table without realizing it. Garrett, "Last time I mentally reorganized the garage while she was on top." The words blurred for a second. I blinked them back into focus. There were more, dozens more. Him mocking my job, my clothes, the way I spoke, the routines I kept that he benefited from every single day. Garrett, She's so easy to manipulate. I just tell her I need something and she does it. Garrett. I settled because she was stable. That's literally it. She was there. There it was, the sentence that changed something permanent inside me. Not anger, not hysteria, clarity. I took screenshots of everything. Every message, every photo, every plan, sent them to myself, deleted the sent history from his phone. Then I stood up, made breakfast, and kissed him goodbye like nothing had happened. He smiled at me that morning, told me he loved me. I smiled back. That Monday, during my lunch break, I called a lawyer. By Wednesday, I knew exactly where I stood. No kids, clear evidence of adultery, most assets protected. The house, mine before the marriage. The car, paid off, titled to me. Joint account, barely anything in it. The lawyer didn't sugarcoat it. If you want this done quickly, she said, you're in a very strong position. I did want it done, but not messy, not loud, not yet. I started gathering documents quietly. Bank statements, deeds, titles, insurance policies, changed passwords on everything that mattered, backed up files to an account he didn't know existed. And that's when I noticed something else. Garrett had started asking questions. Too many. So when do you hear back about that promotion? Did they say anything about the bonus structure? Is there equity involved? At the time, he framed it as support. Now I knew better. He wasn't cheering me on. He was waiting, and he was planning something of his own. The funny thing about betrayal is that once you see it clearly, everything lines up. The late nights, the sudden interest in my finances, the way he'd started treating our future like a math problem. I stopped confronting, I stopped reacting, and I started preparing, because by then I already knew one thing for certain. Garrett thought he was playing me, and he had no idea I had already flipped the board. The call came on a Thursday morning. Not a text, a call. That alone told me it wasn't casual. I was halfway through sorting emails at my desk when my phone buzzed with a name I hadn't seen pop up in years. Imogen Brooks, Garrett's ex-girlfriend, the woman whose name he always followed with a shrug and a dismissive, ancient history. I let it ring once, twice, then I answered. "Nina," Imogen said, skipping pleasantries. Her voice was tight, clipped. "Can you meet me?" My finger stilled over the keyboard. "About what?" "Not over the phone," she said. "Now, if you can." That edge in her voice, the one that says something's already on fire, made the decision for me. We met at a diner 2 blocks from my office. Neutral ground, cheap coffee, vinyl booths that stuck to your skin. Imogen was already there when I arrived. She hadn't touched her coffee. It sat between her hands like a prop she didn't know what to do with. "You're going to want to sit down," she said. I slid into the booth across from her. She didn't smile, just looked at me straight on. "I ran into someone from Garrett's office yesterday, a woman named Tess, accounting." I nodded slowly. I'd heard the name before. "She told me something," Imogen continued, "about Garrett and a coworker, Sloane." I kept my face neutral. "Go on." Imogen's eyes narrowed. She studied me for a second, then nodded like she'd just confirmed something. "You already know," she said. "I do." "How long?" 3 weeks. "And you haven't said anything?" "No." She exhaled hard through her nose. "Smart." I waited. Imogen leaned forward, lowering her voice even though the diner was nearly empty. "Everyone at his firm knows," she said. "They've known for months. They joke about it. Happy hours, lunches. It's treated like some office romance." My jaw tightened, but I didn't interrupt. "That's not why I called you," she added. Something cold slid down my spine. "What else?" I asked. Imogen reached into her purse and pulled out her phone. She unlocked it, scrolled, then slid it across the table to me. "He spoke to a divorce attorney," she said, 2 Tuesdays ago, morning." I looked up sharply. "He's filing?" "Not yet," her mouth twisted. "He's waiting." "Waiting for what?" I asked, though I already knew. Imogen's voice dropped. "For your promotion to finalize. Bigger salary, bigger settlement." Everything clicked at once. The The sudden enthusiasm, the questions about bonuses and equity, the way he'd pushed me to accept quickly before year-end. He hadn't been proud of me, he'd been positioning himself. "When did you hear this?" I asked. "Tess overheard him in the parking garage," Imogen said. "He was on the phone with the attorney, told him to have everything ready but not to file until he gave the word, said he needed a few more weeks to lock things down." Lock things down, like I was a vault. The diner felt too small, suddenly too close. Imogen watched my face carefully. "I didn't come to you because I care about Garrett," she said. "I came because I hate him." I believed her. Their breakup years ago hadn't been clean. He'd cheated then, too. I knew that now with a clarity that made the past rearrange itself. "He did the same thing to me," she continued. "Charm, promises, plans. Then I found out he was lining up my replacement before I'd even packed my boxes." I handed her phone back. "Thank you," I said quietly. She hesitated. "What are you going to do?" I leaned back against the booth, folded my hands in my lap, and let the anger settle into something colder, something useful. "I'm going to finish what he started, just not the way he expects." Imogen's lips curved, not exactly into a smile, but something sharp and satisfied. "If you need anything," she said, "dates, details, names." "I will," I replied, "and when I do, I'll ask." We sat there in silence for a moment. Two women connected by the same man's arrogance. Not friends, not allies out of affection, but aligned. Because sometimes revenge doesn't need trust. It just needs timing. And Garrett had no idea the clock had already started. Once you know someone is lying to you, everything they do becomes data. Every smile, every casual question, every touch meant to reassure instead of connect. I started watching Garrett the way you watch an opponent once the rules of the game are clear. He came home that night in a great mood. Too great. Humming under his breath while he kicked off his shoes, dropping his bag in the same careless spot by the counter like nothing in his life was about to implode. "Hey, babe," he said, kissing my cheek. "You look tired." "I am," I said honestly. "Long day." He didn't hear the warning in my voice. He never did. Over dinner, he talked about work, about pressure, about how people didn't always get the recognition they deserved. Then, right on cue, he steered the conversation where he wanted it. "So," he said lightly, swirling his wine, "any update on that promotion?" I took a bite of food, chewed slowly. "Nothing official yet," I replied. His eyes flickered just for a second. "Well, when it comes through," he said, smiling, "it'll be huge for us." "For us?" I nodded. "Sure." Inside, something settled into place. That night, after he fell asleep, I lay awake staring at the ceiling, thinking about Imogen's voice, about the lawyer, about the way Garrett had described me to Sloane as useful, obedient, safe. I realized something then that hurt worse than the cheating. He didn't see me as a partner. He saw me as a resource, and resources, in his mind, were meant to be extracted. So I stopped hesitating. The next morning, I moved quietly. I copied every important document: bank statements, deeds, titles, insurance policies, changed passwords on everything that mattered, backed up files to an account he didn't know existed. By Wednesday, I'd signed a lease on a small apartment across town. Nothing fancy, temporary, mine. Thursday, I scheduled movers for Saturday. Friday morning, I opened a new account and transferred my half of the joint savings into it. Garrett noticed nothing. He was too busy texting. Imogen stayed in the background, feeding me information when I asked. Dates, names, proof that the affair violated company policy. She didn't push, didn't pry. She knew better. And then I made the move he never saw coming. I called my boss. "About the promotion," I said. "I need some time." There was a pause on the line. "You're turning it down?" "For now," I said. "I need to reassess my priorities." He was confused, disappointed, but respectful. When I hung up, my hands shook, not from fear, but from adrenaline. Garrett was waiting for that promotion like a payout at the end of a heist. I just pulled the vault out from under him. That evening, he came home glowing. "I'm so excited for tomorrow," he said, slipping his arms around me from behind. "Finally introducing you properly to everyone." Tomorrow. The anniversary dinner. The stage. I smiled into the sink where I was washing dishes. "Yeah," I said. "Should be interesting." My phone buzzed in my pocket. A message from Imogen. "He's been bragging, thinks he's untouchable." I dried my hands slowly. "Good," I typed back. "Let him." By the time I went to bed that night, everything was in place. Financially, legally, emotionally, I was already gone. Garrett just didn't know it yet. And tomorrow, in front of everyone he wanted to impress, he was going to learn exactly what happens when you mistake silence for weakness. By the time the last guest arrived, Garrett was already halfway through his second drink. He'd changed shirts twice before settling on the one he thought made him look confident instead of desperate. I noticed. I always noticed. "Relax," I told him, straightening the centerpiece on the table. "It's just dinner." "Exactly," he said, grinning. "Just dinner." But his eyes were already scanning the room, mentally arranging the audience. People filtered in, laughing, complimenting the place, handing over wine bottles like offerings. Garrett soaked it up, played the charming host, kissed cheeks, told stories that always positioned him at the center. I stayed quiet, watched, and waited. The roast came sooner than I expected. He barely waited for the plates to be cleared before leaning back, glass raised, basking in the glow of attention. And then Cole spoke. "Because Nina is actually incredible in bed." Silence detonated like a bomb with the sound sucked out. I let it stretch, let Garrett twist in it. Then finally I spoke. "I saw your phone," I said, calmly. 3 weeks ago. Sloan, the messages, the hotels, the plans." His mouth opened, closed. "You left it on the counter," I continued. 6 months of texts. You calling me useless, a placeholder, a roommate who pays half the bills." Around the table, people shifted, eyes darting, realizing they were trapped inside something far more intimate than dinner conversation. "You told her you were waiting to leave me until my promotion finalized, so you could maximize what you took." Garrett stood up so fast his chair screeched against the floor. "That's not," he started. "I turned it down," I said, softly. That stopped him. "I turned down the promotion yesterday," I repeated, "so whatever fantasy payout you were counting on, it's gone." The color drained from his face. "I've already filed," I added, reaching into the drawer beside me and placing the folder on the table. "You'll be officially served Monday. I figured I'd save everyone the suspense." No one spoke. Then Blair stood abruptly. "I think we should go," she said, already grabbing her bag. The door emptied in under 2 minutes. Chairs scraped, apologies mumbled, eyes avoided. When the door finally closed, it was just the 3 of us, Garrett, me, and Imogen, sitting calmly, watching him unravel. "This is my house," Garrett said hoarsely. "You can't just—" "It's mine," I corrected. "My name, my deed. You can pack a bag and leave tonight." He laughed then, sharp and brittle. "You're really doing this?" "Yes." Something in his expression cracked. Anger slid into desperation like a bad costume change. "Nina, listen," he said, stepping closer. "We can fix this. Counseling, whatever you want." "You don't love me," I replied. "You loved what I did for you." His jaw clenched. Behind him, Imogen didn't say a word. She didn't need to. Garrett looked between us, realization dawning too late. He'd lost, and he'd lost in front of witnesses. The first 3 days after the dinner were silence. Not peace, just the kind of quiet that buzzes in your ears because you know something ugly is pacing just out of sight. Garrett tried calling the next morning. I didn't answer. Then came the texts, long ones, angry ones, apologetic ones, voice notes that swung wildly between "you ruined everything" and "please just talk to me." By Saturday afternoon, I blocked his number. I spent that weekend moving. The movers came early, just like I'd scheduled. I watched from the doorway as they carried boxes past Garrett's empty side of the closet, shirts still hanging there, shoes lined up like he'd be back any minute. He wasn't. By Sunday night, I was sitting on the floor of my new apartment, eating takeout straight from the carton, feeling something I hadn't felt in months. Relief. Monday morning, my lawyer emailed me. Papers served. That same afternoon, my phone rang. It was Forrest. The same Forrest who'd been at the dinner. The same Forrest who'd laughed too hard at Garrett's jokes. "Nina," he said, voice low, "have you heard about Garrett?" I sat up. "No," I said. "What about him?" "They fired him. Like, escorted out of the building fired." I closed my eyes. "What?" "HR got an anonymous tip. Policy violations, evidence, a lot of it." I didn't respond because I already knew. Imogen called an hour later, practically vibrating through the phone. "I sent everything," she said, not even trying to hide the satisfaction. "Screenshots, dates, hotel receipts. HR didn't hesitate. Sloan's gone too." There it was, the moment she expected gratitude. "We make a good team," she added, lighter now, "don't we?" I let the silence stretch. Then I said calmly, "No, we don't." "What?" "You helped because you wanted him to burn," I said. "That's fine, but this ends here." She scoffed. "Wow, after everything I did for you?" "For yourself," I corrected. "We're done." I hung up, blocked her number, and moved on. Or at least I tried to. 2 weeks later, on a Wednesday evening, someone started pounding on my door. Not knocking, pounding, the kind of sound that carries entitlement and desperation in equal measure. I looked through the peephole and almost laughed. Garrett stood in the hallway. So did Imogen. They were yelling at each other. I opened the door before I could stop myself. "You ruined my life," Garrett shouted the second he saw me. I crossed my arms. "You did that yourself." "You sent those emails," he snapped. "I didn't," I said evenly. "She did." Imogen's head snapped toward him. "You told her?" "I didn't have to. You're not subtle." They turned on each other instantly. "This is your fault," Garrett yelled, shoving Imogen. "My fault?" she shot back. "You cheated. You bragged about it. You thought you were untouchable." The argument escalated fast. Too fast. Hands grabbed, voices rose. Someone shoved someone else hard enough to hit the wall. I stepped back into my apartment and leaned against the frame, watching. It was surreal. Two people who both underestimated me now tearing into each other like animals backed into a corner. "You've always been jealous," Garrett hissed. "Always wanted my life." "I don't want your leftovers," Imogen snapped. "I wanted to watch you fall." That was the wrong thing to say. Imogen's fist came out of nowhere. The sound was sharp, wet. Garrett stumbled back, hand flying to his mouth. Blood. He stared at it, stunned. "You chipped my tooth," he said, voice slurred. "You chipped my tooth." I laughed. I tried not to. I failed. I laughed so hard I had to grab the door frame to stay upright. They both turned toward me, disbelief written across their faces. "You think this is funny?" Garrett demanded, blood on his lip, dignity gone. "Yes," I said, wiping my eyes. "Actually, it's the funniest thing I've seen in years." Something broke in him then. He stepped toward me, hands out like he was pleading. "Nina, please, I messed up. I know I did, but we can fix this." I stared at him, at the man who'd called me a placeholder. "You want me back?" I said slowly. "Now?" "Yes," he said desperately. Imogen stepped forward too, as if suddenly remembering she was still there. "He doesn't deserve you," she said. "I do." I looked between them, one with blood on his mouth, the other with scratches on her face, both convinced I was still something to be claimed. "No," I said. "Neither of you does." They started arguing again. I raised my phone. 5 seconds, I said. Then I'm calling the police. They froze. Imogen backed away first, muttering something bitter under her breath. Garrett lingered, searching my face for something, anything. I gave him nothing. Eventually, they both left. The hallway fell quiet. I closed the door, locked it, added the chain. Then I walked back to my kitchen, reheated leftover pizza, and sat down at the counter. I took one bite and laughed again, not because it was funny, but because for the first time in a long time, I was free.